Have you ever finished sewing something, tried it on, and then it just didn't fit, even though you followed the pattern instructions exactly? Well, this has happened to me more times than I'd like to admit. Hi, my name is Bianca, and I've been sewing pretty much nearly every day for 7 years. Now I help you build your confidence in the art of sewing by sharing everything I have learned along the way. For the first few years of my sewing journey, fitting seemed like a daunting task that would be hard to overcome. So today I want to talk about just that, the most frustrating part of sewing clothes, the fit. Let's start with you need to let go of the expectation that it is going to fit you right out of the packet. Now you might be lucky and it does fit, but more than likely you will need to make some minor adjustments for better fitting. When I started sewing, I just assumed that if I cut out all my pattern pieces correctly and stuck to all the seam allowance that it would fit because I was the one making it for me. But sewing patterns, like shopboard clothes, are made for a specific body shape and those don't necessarily match our measurements. And there is no problem with those measurements not matching your own. We just need to learn to adapt the sewing patterns to our unique selves, to our curves. Once I stopped expecting the sewing patterns to fit me straight out of the packet and knowing that I would need to make some adjustments, I was able to not just experiment more, but I was also able to learn more about my body and all the techniques that I could use to make my clothing fit better. And this was a total game changer. In order for you to get good fitting clothes, you need to take your measurements. The clothes that you buy in the store have completely different size brackets to those in sewing patterns. So don't just select a size based on that size 12 dress that you bought a few weeks ago. You need to take your body measurements regularly, not just once a year, and preferably every time that you start a new project, because that will make sure that you are selecting the right size. This can save you a lot of time and frustration, and I find that writing my measurements down helps me see how my body changes over time. So on my mobile phone, I keep a note of the dates as well as the measurements, and this helps me see when my body likely changes and also what are my measurements that tend to stay the same. I've actually been having a bit of trouble with this one lately because I have been losing weight, and with each project I am a completely different measurement. So if you are going through a process of where your body is going through changes, maybe it's better to make clothing that has elasticated waist so it is a little bit more forgiving for you, instead of going through all the trouble of making clothing and then they don't fit in the end. It's just frustrating. And once you know your measurements, you can compare them to the size chart as well as the finished garment measurements chart, which most patterns have, and that will help you choose which size will be most comfortable for you. So if you would like to have something more fitted, relaxed, or even roomy. And remember that those sizes are just that. They are just numbers to guide you to select the right fit for you. Once you know what size or sizes you fall into, learn to make some basic adjustments. Now, you don't need to know a lot about making adjustments. Just knowing how to tweak your pattern pieces slightly will make a big difference. So I started by learning how to shorten my bodices as well as my trousers and skirts, because I'm only 5'2" and everything is always too long on me. After that, I learned how to grade between different sizes because my body measurements tends to fall between 3 different size brackets. Once you know how to make these small adjustments, that just opens up the door for you to be able to learn how to make more adjustments to future projects, like adjusting darts, making small or full bust adjustments, and also lengthening or shortening the rise of your trousers. And once you have made these adjustments to your paper templates, it's time to make a toile, or in other words, a test garment. Now, I am not a big fan of making toiles, but when I'm making something fitted, I like to make sure that all the curves are going to be in the right place as well as the darts are hitting the correct spot. Now, I'm not a fan of wasting my time or fabric in creating a toile, but it's just going to save me from frustration later, so I might as well take the time to work through it now, and then my real piece is going to come out a lot better. I try to make quicker versions with fabric that I don't care too much for, and I will maybe make a bodice without the lining or buttons, or I won't even finish the seams or do the hems, and this is just a way less pressured way of figuring out if my adjustments have worked out, and my end result will be a lot more satisfying. Now you have all of your measurements, know which sizes you fall into, know some adjustments that you need to make. It's time to keep a note of all of them. I only started doing this a few years into my sewing journey, but it has been so helpful looking back on not only the progress I have made, but just everything that I've written down. So I've written things like the adjustments I needed to make, the sizes I chose, any further adjustments I would want to make, the fabric I've used, and generally just how I felt wearing and making the project. Now when I want to make the same thing again, I've done all the hard work work, I've removed all the guessworking, and I just get making. And trust that you will get better. We all learn at different paces. Our sewing journeys are all different to each other, so do not compare your work to that of others. Pay attention to what you are doing. Don't stop challenging yourself, because that is how you learn, and be kind to yourself. Rome wasn't built in a day. So that's how I learned how to sew clothes that fit me. And with each new project, there's always something to learn. That's just the beauty of sewing. If you're starting out your sewing journey, check this video over here where I share some tips to help you build your confidence in sewing. That's it from me today. Bye for now.